used to think the worst kind of betrayal came from strangers. People you barely know, people who owe you nothing. I never imagined it could come from two people I loved most in the world, my husband and my mother. Even now, saying those words feels like chewing glass. It still doesn't fit in my mouth, like a confession that doesn't belong to me. It started in small, harmless ways. That's how poison always does. My husband, Mark, had always been polite to my mother, grateful even. She helped us move into our first house, bought us new curtains, called every Sunday to ask if we were eating right. But after our son was born, her visits became more frequent. "Just helping out," she said. I didn't question it. What daughter questions her mother's love? Mark used to groan when she came over. He'd whisper, "Here comes the tornado," and we'd laugh. But that changed. Somewhere between diaper changes and sleepless nights, I noticed him laughing at her jokes instead of mine. They started sharing little glances. Not flirtatious, not yet. Just long enough to make me feel like I'd walked into a conversation I wasn't invited to. I told myself it was in my head. I was tired, hormonal, insecure about the weight I hadn't lost. My therapist later said that's how gaslighting begins, when you start silencing your own intuition because love taught you not to make a fuss. But back then, I was just a woman trying to be grateful. One night, I came home from work earlier than usual. The lights in the kitchen were low, and I could hear them laughing. A soft, intimate kind of laughter. The kind couples have when they think no one's watching. My mom was leaning against the counter, holding a glass of wine, barefoot. Mark stood too close, pouring her another. When they saw me, they both froze like children caught stealing. Then my mom said, "Oh, honey, Mark was just telling me about the new project." The air between them felt like static. I ignored it, smiled, pretended nothing was off. I kissed my son goodnight and went upstairs. But my stomach wouldn't settle. That night, when Mark climbed into bed, I felt the scent of my mother's perfume on his shirt. Floral, sharp, impossible to miss. I didn't sleep. I watched him breathing beside me and thought of all the times my mother had held my hand as a child and told me, "Men will come and go, but I'll always be your home." The next morning, I asked her casually, "You and Mark seem to get along these days?" She smiled, that same soft, careful smile she used when she lied to my father years ago. "Well, someone has to keep him company while you're always at work." It was a joke, but it landed wrong. I laughed too loudly. I started watching them differently. How her hand lingered on his shoulder when she passed behind him. How he'd light up when she complimented him. The way they talked. Too easily. Too often. When I'd enter the room, their sentences would fold in on themselves. I'd hear, "No, it's fine," or "We'll talk later." One afternoon, I left work early again, my excuse rehearsed. When I opened the front door, the house was quiet except for the faint hum of music. My heart picked up before my brain caught up. I walked down the hallway and saw them through the crack in the living room door. My mother sitting too close to him on the couch, her hand on his thigh. She pulled back when she saw me, as if my eyes were a mirror she couldn't stand to look into. "Oh, darling, we were just watching something." Mark stood up, stammering. "She was showing me some old photos from your childhood." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him why his face looked guilty, why his shirt buttons were mismatched. But I didn't. I smiled instead, that tight, frozen smile women wear when their world begins to tilt. That night I asked him, "Do you think my mom is beautiful?" He looked startled. "She's your mom." That's not what I asked. He hesitated too long. "She's attractive, I guess, for her age." For her age. That phrase slashed me open in a quiet way. Because I heard what he didn't say. "More than you," lately. After that, I couldn't stop noticing. How his eyes followed her when she left a room. How she'd wear lipstick at our house but not at her own. How my husband started humming the same song my mother used to sing while cooking. I kept telling myself they'd never. My mother loved me too much. My husband had too much integrity. But love and integrity crumble the same way walls do. Slowly, invisibly, from the inside out. The breaking point came one weekend when my mom offered to babysit while Mark and I went on a date. He canceled last minute. Some urgent call from work, he said. I decided to stay home instead of going out alone. Hours later, I heard laughter in the basement. Soft, rhythmic, too familiar. I followed the sound, barefoot, heart pounding, each step louder than the last. The basement door was slightly open. Light spilled out, flickering against the walls. I heard my name. I froze. Then I heard my mother's voice, low, breathless, saying, "She'll never find out." I didn't need to see. I knew. I walked out of that house, barefoot, keys in hand, not even realizing it was raining. I drove until the city blurred, until my chest stopped shaking long enough to breathe. When I finally stopped, my reflection in the car window didn't look like me. It looked like someone who had just watched her life become a crime scene. That night, Mark called me 12 times. My mother called too. I didn't answer. The next morning she texted, "We need to talk. It's not what you think." But it was. It was exactly what I thought. The next morning, the house didn't look like mine anymore. It felt borrowed, like every object inside it had witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see. The walls seemed to hum with silence, the kind that presses against your chest and asks, "Are you sure you want to stay?" Mark's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. My mother's too. For a moment, I sat there with the engine running, staring at the front door like it was a living thing that might bite. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wasn't ready for their faces. But I was done being afraid of the truth. When I walked in, they were sitting together on the couch, not close, not touching, but the air between them was heavy, like smoke after a fire. My mother looked older overnight. Mark looked like he hadn't slept. He stood first. "Emily, please, let us explain." I held up a hand. "Don't you dare make this sound smaller than it is." My voice didn't sound like mine. It was steady, cold, the kind of tone you use when love has already packed its bags. My mother tried to speak. "It was a mistake." I laughed. Not a real laugh, the kind that burns on the way out. "A mistake? Did you trip and fall into each other's arms? Did gravity cheat for you?" She started to cry. It made me sick. "Don't you dare cry," I said. "You don't get to cry in my house." Mark reached for me, but I stepped back. His eyes were red, his jaw tight. "It wasn't like that," he said. "It just happened. We were both lonely." "Lonely?" I repeated. "You were lonely, so you slept with my mother." Silence. The kind that screams louder than shouting. He tried again, softer this time. "It started when you were working late. She was here a lot, helping with the baby. We'd talk, and it got too close. We didn't plan it." My mother whispered, "It was only once." Only once. As if the number made it cleaner. As if betrayal counted like calories. The smaller the portion, the less the guilt. I sat down because my knees stopped believing in gravity. I looked at the two of them, these people who used to be my safety, my family. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" I asked. "You've burned the bridge I was born on." Neither of them answered. My mother reached out, fingers shaking. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how it happened." But she did know. They both did. Every moment has a choice before it. Every betrayal has a door you decide to open. I stood up. "You know what's worse than the cheating?" I said. "It's that I would have forgiven either of you, separately, but not together. Never together." Mark started crying then. Real tears. The kind that twist your stomach because they look too human. "I love you," he said. "It didn't mean anything." I shook my head. It meant everything. I walked upstairs and started packing a bag. I didn't even know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay in a house where the floor remembered what they'd done. My mother followed me halfway up the stairs. "Please," she whispered, "we can fix this." I turned and looked at her. really looked at her. The woman who had brushed my hair before school, who had kissed my scraped knees, who had promised to protect me from the world. "You were supposed to fix me," I said, "not break me." When I left, my son was still sleeping. I kissed his forehead, whispered, "Mommy loves you," and closed the door behind me. The sky outside was too blue for what had just happened, the kind of morning that mocks you with normalcy. I drove with no destination, just a need to move. The tears didn't come until I hit the highway. They came all at once, violent, unstoppable. Not just for what I lost, but for what I could never get back. I ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that smells like bleach and secrets. I checked in under my maiden name. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a wife or a daughter. I saw an echo, something left behind after the explosion. I thought about calling someone, a friend, a sister, anyone. But shame has a way of making you quiet. Who would understand this kind of betrayal? Who would believe it without flinching? I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Every sound outside, a door closing, footsteps, the hum of the vending machine, felt too loud. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Messages from both of them. From Mark, "Please come home. We need to talk." From Mom, "I can't live if you hate me." I turned the phone over and let the screen go dark. That night, I dreamed of fire, our house burning, my mother's face in the window, Mark trying to pull me out while holding her hand. I woke up gasping, the taste of smoke still in my throat. And that's when I decided I wouldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But before disappearing completely, I needed to face one last thing. The truth neither of them had told me yet. Because there was something else. A detail I hadn't noticed before I ran. Something I saw in that basement that didn't make sense. The memory of that night wouldn't leave me alone. It looped in my mind like a broken film reel. The laughter, the shadows, the low sound of my mother's voice whispering, "She'll never find out." But there was something else, something I hadn't processed in the moment, that now started scratching at me from the inside. It was the music, that faint song playing in the background when I caught them in the basement. I remembered it clearly now. An old lullaby, the one my mother used to hum to me when I was a child. I hadn't heard it in years. It was our song. My song. Why was it playing? Why then? I couldn't shake the image. My mother sitting there, with my husband, in that basement, while that song played like some sick soundtrack to their secret. I needed answers. Not apologies, not excuses. The truth. The next morning, I went back to the house. The air inside felt stale, untouched. They weren't there. Maybe they thought I was gone for good. Good. That made it easier. I went downstairs to the basement. The wine glasses were still on the table, half full. A blanket tossed over the back of the couch. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, jasmine and guilt. And then I saw it. My son's baby blanket, folded neatly on the chair beside them. My stomach turned. Why was it there? He hadn't been in the basement for months. That's when the idea hit me like ice water. I went to the cabinet where we kept old boxes and photo albums. There was a small, locked drawer Mark had once told me not to worry about. "Just papers from work," he'd said. I found the key easily. He wasn't as careful as he thought. Inside were letters. Some were addressed to me, birthday cards, notes from my mom. But underneath them, I found envelopes with handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened one. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from her. To him. The first line nearly stopped my heart. "You promised me she'd never find out." I sat there, my hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. Each letter was worse than the last. She wrote about their connection, about how years of restraint finally broke, about how she never stopped feeling what she shouldn't feel. Years. I felt like the floor fell out from under me. This hadn't started after the baby. It hadn't even started after we got married. It had started before. I grabbed the stack and kept reading. each sentence stabbing deeper. She mentioned things that didn't make sense. The secret we shared before Emily ever met you. The promise you made when she was still in school. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just an affair, it was something else. Something older, dirtier, twisted. I slammed the box shut and stumbled upstairs, my pulse roaring in my ears. I looked around the house and realized I didn't even know whose memories I was standing in anymore. Had every birthday, every dinner, every smile been built on this rotting foundation? I called Mark. He answered on the second ring, voice low, cautious. Emily? I found the letters. Silence. Emily, he said finally. Please don't jump to conclusions. Conclusions? I spat. My mother wrote you love letters before we were even married. How long has this been going on? He exhaled sharply. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. He didn't. Instead, he said something that made my whole body go cold. Your mother. She's not who you think she is. I felt dizzy. What are you talking about? She should have told you years ago, he said. I didn't want to be the one. I sank to the floor, the letters spilling around me like ashes. Tell me what? He hesitated, and then I heard it. The one truth I was never supposed to hear. I met your mother long before I met you, he said. She was my therapist. And back then, she told me she had a daughter. I froze. So what? What does that mean? He went silent for a long time, then barely a whisper. It means. I didn't know you were her daughter when I first met you. The world stopped. Every sound drained away until all I could hear was my heartbeat hammering against the edge of my sanity. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and kept buzzing, his name flashing across the screen like an alarm I couldn't shut off. All at once, everything made sense and nothing did. The way my mother looked at him the first time she met him, that strange flicker of recognition. The way she always said, he reminds me of someone. I felt sick. Betrayed didn't even begin to cover it. It was like I had been living in someone else's story, one written years before I was old enough to read, and I knew I couldn't face them alone, because whatever secret connected them didn't end with betrayal. It began with it. I didn't move for what felt like hours. The phone kept buzzing, his name lighting up over and over, like it refused to let me look away from the disaster. When it finally stopped, the silence hit me harder than any words could. I sat there on the floor surrounded by the pieces of my life, his voice echoing in my head. I didn't know you were her daughter. Over and over. The sentence twisted itself into something worse every time I repeated it. It meant that when he met me, when he married me, when he promised me forever, he had already loved her once. He had already crossed the line that no man should ever cross. By the time I stood up, I wasn't crying anymore. My body had gone completely still, like the calm before a storm. I knew I couldn't hide in that motel forever. I needed to face them, not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted them to see what they had created. When I pulled into the driveway again, the lights were on. My mother's car was gone, but Mark's was still there. I walked inside quietly, almost peacefully. He was sitting in the kitchen, elbows on the table, head in his hands. He looked up when he heard me. Emily, he said, voice hoarse. I didn't mean for any of this. Stop. My voice was calm, too calm. Don't talk to me like I'm your wife. Talk to me like I'm the daughter of the woman you slept with. Maybe that'll sound more honest. He flinched like I'd hit him. Good. Let it hurt. Emily, he said again, you have to understand. It was before us. I didn't know she was your mother until after we were already what? Engaged? Married? Pregnant? He swallowed. After the wedding. The air left my lungs. So on our wedding day, you stood there, holding my hands, looking at my mother in the crowd, and both of you knew. He didn't answer, and that was all the answer I needed. She said nothing because she was afraid of losing me, he said quietly. And I didn't say anything because I thought it would destroy you. It did, I said. You just took your time doing it." He reached for me, desperate. "Emily, please, I love you." I stepped back. "You don't love me. You love the story of me. You love the part of me that reminded you of her." That hit him. I saw it in the way his eyes dropped, the way his shoulders caved in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Life was moving on, even if mine had stopped. I turned toward the door, but his voice stopped me. "She didn't mean to hurt you. Your mom. She thought she was helping you when she introduced us." That sentence almost made me laugh. Helping me? By giving me her leftovers? He stood up, his voice cracking. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Mark? Tell me. Did she give you her blessing? Did she whisper advice on how to make me happy because she knew exactly what you liked?" He started crying again, but I couldn't look at him anymore. I walked upstairs, into the room that used to feel like home, and for the first time I noticed how small it really was. The bed we shared, the photos on the wall, the baby monitor blinking softly on the nightstand. All of it tainted now. My mother had been here. My husband had been here. And somehow, the two stories had merged into one nightmare I couldn't wake from. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at our wedding picture. The three of us stood side by side. Me, Mark, and my mother. Her hand rested on his arm, and now I saw it, clear as day. The familiarity in her touch. It had always been there. I tore the picture in half, then in half again, until it was nothing but scraps in my hands. I could have screamed. I could have thrown everything we owned out the window. But instead, I whispered something I didn't even know I'd been holding on to. "Thank you." Because in a sick, twisted way, the truth set me free. Free from the illusion that love meant safety. Free from the lie that blood means loyalty. I packed what was left of my things. This time, I wasn't running. I was leaving. But before I closed that door for the last time, I took one last look at the house. The walls that had held our laughter, our fights, our child's first words. I whispered to them, "Remember me differently." And then I walked out. I didn't go back to the motel. I drove to the beach instead, the place I used to go as a teenager when my mom and I argued. I sat there for hours, listening to the waves crash, letting the cold wind sting my skin until it felt like mine again. I thought about my son, sleeping somewhere above all this mess. I thought about how I would tell him one day. The truth, but not all of it. Some truths are too heavy for small shoulders. I closed my eyes, breathed in the salt, and for the first time since that night, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Not forgiveness, not yet, but peace. And then, just when I thought it was over, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't my mother. It was a number I didn't recognize. The message read, "Emily, you don't know everything. Call me. It's about your son." The message burned on my screen. "Emily, you don't know everything. Call me. It's about your son." No name, no context, just that line. My stomach tightened like it was warning me before my brain could catch up. At first, I thought it was a cruel prank. Maybe my mother trying to reach me from another number, or Mark desperate enough to use someone else's phone. But something about the tone didn't fit. It wasn't pleading. It was urgent. I hesitated, then called. The line clicked twice before a woman's voice answered. Calm, low, older. "Emily?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name's Dr. Reeves," she said. "I was your mother's colleague. We worked together years ago." My pulse started pounding. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," she said. "But you deserve to know the truth about your son." My voice cracked. "What truth?" "Your mother brought him to my clinic a few months ago for a genetic test. She told me it was routine, but it wasn't. The results came back unusual. I tried to reach her, but she stopped answering. I went cold. What do you mean, unusual?" The woman hesitated. "Emily, I can't explain over the phone. You should come in. Please. It's important." I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. My mother had taken my son for a test? Without telling me? Why? The drive to the clinic felt endless. Every traffic light was a punishment, every second stretching like an accusation. I kept thinking, maybe she wanted to know if he inherited something, maybe a health issue. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. When I arrived, the receptionist looked startled. "Dr. Reeves will see you right away." The office smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Dr. Reeves was waiting behind her desk. Gray hair, kind eyes that didn't match the tension in the room. She gestured for me to sit. "I'm sorry to do this like this," she said softly, "but I think your mother was hiding something. Something you need to see." She opened a folder, slid a sheet across the desk. A paternity test. My name, my son's name, and under father, one word that made my throat close up. Inconclusive. I frowned. What does that mean? It means the DNA markers don't match in a normal way. It suggests a close relation, but not exactly parental. It's rare. Usually happens when the supposed father and another close relative share too many genetic similarities. Her eyes searched mine, waiting for me to understand. And when I did, I almost laughed from the horror of it. "You're saying," I whispered, "you're saying my husband and my mother." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Emily. I think it's possible that your son's biological father is not who you think it is." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the desk. Everything inside me screamed, "No. No, this can't be real." Dr. Reeves said something else, but I couldn't hear her. My ears filled with a ringing sound. I stood up, stumbled to the door, and barely made it to my car before the sob hit me like a wave. I screamed. Loud enough for people outside to turn. I didn't care. The sound came from somewhere deep, from a place that words can't reach. When I finally ran out of breath, I started the car. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't go home. The idea of stepping into that house again made my skin crawl. I ended up at the old park near the river, the one where Mark and I had our first date. I sat there, shaking, remembering how my mother had teased me afterward, how she'd said, "He's a keeper, Em, I can tell." Now I knew why. I didn't want to believe it. I needed proof. Something, anything, to make this all stop being real. So I called Mark. He answered instantly. "Emily, don't," I said. My voice was steady now, sharp. "I just came from Dr. Reeves' office." Silence. Then a sigh. Heavy. Resigned. "I told her not to contact you," he said quietly. My fingers tightened around the phone. "So it's true?" He didn't answer. "Mark," I said, my voice breaking. "Is he your son?" He exhaled, a sound halfway between a sob and a confession. "Emily, I didn't know until she showed me the results. I swear to God I didn't." "You didn't know because you never asked," I hissed. "Because you both wanted to pretend it didn't happen." I could hear him crying now. "I love him, Emily. He's my son no matter what. And he's your son. Please." "Stop," I said. "You don't get to call him that. You don't get to call me anymore." I hung up. For the next few hours, I just drove, nowhere, everywhere. The sun was setting and the sky looked like it was bleeding. My mind replayed everything. Every touch, every lie, every smile from my mother that now meant something else. By the time I reached the edge of town, I realized I was heading toward her house. I hadn't planned it. My body just decided. There were no more words left to text, no tears left to cry. I needed to see her face. When I pulled up, the lights were on. Through the window, I saw her moving around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Humming, cleaning, living. Something inside me snapped. I walked to the door, each step echoing in my chest like thunder. I didn't knock. I opened it. She turned, startled, her smile fading the second she saw my eyes. "Emily," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "No," I said quietly. "You shouldn't be anywhere near me." She froze. And for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Real fear. I took a deep breath. We're done pretending, Mom. I know everything. She stood there, her hands trembling, her lips parting like she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it all the same. I could see the panic behind her eyes, the kind you can't fake. She tried to smile, but it came out crooked, brittle, like glass about to shatter. Emily, she said softly, please, just let me explain. Explain? I stepped closer, my voice sharp. You took my son for a DNA test behind my back. You slept with my husband. And now I find out you might have given birth to my child's father. What's left to explain? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I had no sympathy left to give her. She shook her head slowly. You don't understand, sweetheart. You never knew everything about me. I know enough. No, she said, voice breaking. You know the version I built for you, the one that wouldn't scare you. I stared at her, not sure whether to laugh or scream. Scare me? You mean the version where you weren't sleeping with my husband? She winced. It wasn't supposed to happen, Emily. Not like that. I tried to stop it. But Mark, he reminded me of something I lost a long time ago. I felt my nails digging into my palms. Something you lost? You mean my father? That stopped her. She looked at me for a long time, and I swear the silence in that room grew heavy enough to choke me. Finally, she said, You think you know who your father was? I frowned. Don't do this. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't, Emily. You never did. It was like the air went out of the room. I stepped back. What are you talking about? She pressed a shaking hand to her chest. Your father wasn't the man who raised you. He was someone else. Someone I shouldn't have been with. My mouth went dry. Who? Her eyes filled with tears again. He was a patient of mine. I was young, reckless. I fell in love, and I paid for it my whole life. I just stared at her. My mother, the woman who'd built her entire reputation on morality, who lectured me about mistakes, standing there admitting she'd done the exact thing she'd destroyed me with. I swallowed hard. So let me get this straight. You fell in love with a patient, had me, and then years later you fell in love with my husband. Tell me, Mom, was that some kind of twisted cycle you couldn't break? She shook her head, sobbing. I didn't know who Mark was when you met him, I swear. When I realized, I tried to keep my distance. Yeah, I spat. You really kept your distance. She covered her face, crying harder now. It's not what you think. When I saw him, it was like seeing a ghost. He looked so much like... She stopped. Like who? I demanded. Her lips trembled. Like your father. The words hit me like a blade. My father. The man I never met. The man she never talked about. The man she just said was her patient. I stared at her in disbelief. Are you saying Mark looks like him because... She nodded, slowly. Because they're related. My knees gave out, and I grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. Mark? And my father? She nodded again, whispering. Half-brothers. The room started spinning. I pressed my palms to my head, as if I could keep my thoughts from escaping. Everything clicked at once. The strange connection between them. The familiar gestures. The warmth in her eyes when she looked at him. Oh my God, I whispered. You made me marry my father's son. She stepped closer, shaking. I didn't know. Not until after the wedding. I swear to you, Emily, I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought I could keep it buried, that it wouldn't matter anymore. Wouldn't matter? My voice cracked. You let me have a child with him. You let me build a life on top of this nightmare. She tried to reach for me, but I backed away. Don't touch me, she sobbed. I wanted to protect you. Protect me? I shouted. You've ruined me! I turned away, but she grabbed my arm. Her grip was weak but desperate. Emily, please. Mark doesn't know everything. He still doesn't know the truth about your father. If you tell him, he'll fall apart. I yanked my arm free. Good. Maybe it's his turn. Her tears fell silently as she whispered, I was so scared you'd hate me. I don't hate you, I said coldly. I wish I did. Hate would mean I still care. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The night air hit my face, sharp and cold. I got in my car, my hands trembling so hard I could barely turn the key. The headlights cut through the darkness as I drove aimlessly again, the road stretching out like a punishment with no end. The truth sat inside me like poison. I had married into my own bloodline. My son was the child of a tangled, cursed story that started before I was even born. For hours, I drove without thinking. I ended up at the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. The wind was howling, waves crashing far below. I stood there, hair whipping around my face, the salt stinging my eyes. I thought about my son. His smile, his laugh. The way he said "mommy" like it was a secret only he knew. He was innocent. He didn't deserve the truth that had created him. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this story define him. I'd carry the weight myself. I'd bury it so deep the world would never find it again. But before I could leave, I saw headlights approaching in the distance. A car was following the same lonely road. My stomach twisted when I realized whose it was. Mark's. He got out, walking toward me in the wind, his face pale, eyes wild. "Emily," he shouted, "your mother told me everything." And what he said next, what he screamed over the sound of the crashing waves, was the final blow that changed everything I thought I knew. He was shouting before he even reached me, his voice ripped apart by the wind. I couldn't make out the words at first, just fragments carried through the salt and roar of the sea. His face looked hollow, his hair plastered to his forehead. When he finally got close enough, I heard it. "Emily," he gasped. "She lied to both of us." I didn't answer. My body felt numb, like it belonged to someone else. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Mark grabbed his chest, struggling to breathe. "Your mother, she told me everything. About your father, about me. But it's worse than that." My throat was dry. "Worse how?" "She said your father isn't the man she told you," he said. "She said she doesn't even know who he was. He was one of her patients. She never told him about you. And the one she suspects—" He stopped, his eyes wide, terrified. I took a step forward. "Say it." He hesitated, shaking his head. "She thinks it was my father, Emily." The world fell out from under me. The sound of the wind disappeared. The ocean, the cliffs, the stars, everything blurred into one dull hum. "Your father?" I whispered. He nodded slowly, tears streaking his face. "If that's true, if she's right, then you and I—" "No." I said it like a prayer, like I could speak the truth into being. "No, that's impossible." "I wanted to believe that too," he said. "But I called my brother, my half-brother. I asked him to run a test. I had to know." He paused, his breath catching. "He sent me the results an hour ago." My voice barely came out. "And?" He looked at me, eyes full of grief, guilt, and something that broke me all over again. "You're my half-sister, Emily." I felt the air vanish from my lungs. I stumbled backward, one hand over my mouth, the other clutching my chest like I could hold my heart in place. The waves roared louder, angry, merciless. "No," I whispered. "No, you're lying." He shook his head. "I wish I was." My knees buckled. He tried to reach for me, but I pushed him away. "Don't touch me!" I screamed. "Don't you dare touch me!" He stood there, broken, helpless. The man I once loved, the father of my child, the one who'd shared my bed and dreams, now just a stranger bound to me by blood and shame. I sank to the ground, shaking. My mind replayed every memory, every kiss, every word we'd ever said. All of it poisoned now. All of it rewritten. He knelt beside me, crying. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I fell in love with you, not with what she did." I turned my head, looked at him through tears. You fell in love with the daughter of the woman who once had your father's child. Do you even understand what that means?" He covered his face with his hands, sobbing. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't," I said quietly. "There's nothing left to fix." The wind howled between us like the world itself was trying to erase what it had just heard. For a long time, we didn't move, just stood there on that cliff, two broken halves of a story that never should have existed. Finally, I said, "Does my mother know?" He nodded. She guessed. That's why she didn't want you to know the full truth. Of course she did. She'd always known. She'd built her life on secrets, layering lies like wallpaper until the truth disappeared beneath it. I stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from my hands. "Then she's the one who ends this," I said. "She started it. She finishes it." Mark looked up, confused. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the horizon, the faint glow of dawn starting to appear. "I'm going to take back my story." He reached out again, desperate. "Emily, please, don't do anything stupid." I turned to him, my face cold, empty. "You already did that for both of us." And then I walked away, leaving him there by the edge of the world. I didn't drive straight home. I went to my mother's house again. The door was unlocked, the living room lights still on. The smell of her perfume hung heavy in the air. I called out, but there was no answer. I searched room by room until I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table, staring at an old photograph. Me, her, and Mark. Her fingers were trembling around it. She looked up as I entered. Her face was pale, hollow. "He told you," she whispered. I didn't respond. I just nodded. She nodded too, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." "You mean you didn't mean for me to find out at all?" I said. Her eyes filled with tears again. "I thought I was protecting you." "From what? The truth?" I stepped closer. "You weren't protecting me, Mom. You were protecting yourself." She opened her mouth to argue, but I slammed my hands on the table. "Do you realize what you did to us? You didn't just ruin a marriage, you built a family on incest and lies." She flinched but didn't look away. "You think I don't know that? You think I sleep at night?" "Good," I hissed. "You shouldn't." She looked at me then, with the calm of someone who had already accepted their sentence. "I know what I did can't be forgiven," she said quietly. "But I need you to understand. I loved you. I still do. Every terrible thing I did was to keep you close." I stared at her, tears running down my face, and for the first time I saw not the monster, but the pathetic, broken woman underneath. Someone who'd spent her life trying to rewrite her own sins and dragged everyone else into the ink. I whispered, "You didn't keep me close. You destroyed everything that was close to me." She nodded slowly, her eyes empty. "Then there's only one way left to make it right." Before I could ask what she meant, she stood, walked past me, and disappeared down the hall. And what I found when I followed her ended everything. I called after her, but she didn't stop. Her steps were slow, deliberate, like she had already made peace with something I couldn't yet understand. I followed her down the hallway, the air growing colder with every step. The bathroom door was half open. Inside, the light was harsh and white. She was standing by the sink, her reflection fractured in the cracked mirror. For a moment, I thought she was just trying to compose herself. Then I saw the small orange pill bottle in her hand. "Mom," I said quietly, "don't." She looked at me through the mirror. Her eyes were calm, too calm. "It's the only thing left to do, Emily." "No, it's not," I said, stepping forward. "You don't get to leave me with this." She smiled sadly. Sweetheart, I already left you years ago. You just didn't notice. I lunged for her, but she was faster. The pills hit her tongue before I could reach her, her hand trembling only slightly as she swallowed. I grabbed her shoulder, shaking her, screaming her name. But she just looked at me. Not with fear, not with regret, but with relief. Take care of him, she whispered. He's innocent. Don't let this destroy him. Then her knees gave way. I screamed. I don't even remember how long I screamed, until my voice broke, until my throat felt like sandpaper. I called an ambulance, my hands slipping on the phone. When they arrived, she was still breathing, barely. They pulled me back as they worked on her, shouting codes I couldn't understand. She didn't make it. The next hours blurred into static. Police questions, hospital corridors, a nurse's soft voice asking if I had anyone to call. I didn't. Everyone who had ever loved me had turned into a ghost. When I finally got home, the house was silent. My son was asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling, unaware of the storm that had taken everything else away. I sat by his bed, brushed the hair from his forehead, and whispered, "You're not your story. You're mine now." Only mine. For weeks, I moved through life like a shadow. I arranged the funeral, I answered calls I didn't remember. Mark tried to reach me, but I couldn't hear his voice without feeling sick. He sent one message that I never replied to. He deserves to know the truth one day, but not now. Maybe he was right. Maybe someday I'll have to tell my son who his father really was, but not today. Not while he still sees the world as something safe. At the funeral, I stood alone. The priest spoke words about forgiveness, about peace. I didn't hear any of it. When it was my turn to say goodbye, I looked down at her coffin and said the only truth left in me. You broke everything you touched, Mom. But somehow, I still love you, and that's your final curse. The earth swallowed her, and with it, the woman who built a life on lies and left me to clean the ruins. In the months that followed, I sold the house. I took my son and moved to a small apartment by the sea. We started over. He laughs more now. He doesn't know the story that made him, and maybe that's mercy. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself humming that same lullaby she used to sing, the one that played the night everything fell apart. It used to make me cry. Now it just makes me quiet. Because the truth is, pain doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. It becomes part of your shadow, following you quietly until one day, you stop looking back. I still dream about her sometimes. She's always standing at the edge of that cliff, the wind in her hair, her eyes full of something between regret and love. She never speaks. She just looks at me, waiting. And I always wake up before I can ask her the question that haunts me most. Did she ever really love me? Or did she only love the parts of me that reminded her of him?